The night a giant Apache woman knocked on a shy rancher's door changed his life forever. Before we begin, comment your country so I know where this story is reaching. The wind screamed across the high ridges like a wounded animal, driving sheets of snow sideways against the lonely cabin on the slope. If this were a film, the first shot would be a lantern burning inside, its small circle of light fighting a wall of darkness in swirling white. The second shot would be a man's hand, rough and careful, setting a tin cup of coffee down beside an open Bible he wasn't really reading. His name was Eli Carter, 42 years old, owner of more land than he knew what to do with, and still, somehow, lonelier than the hills themselves. Outside, something heavy hit the cabin door once. Then again, not the frantic pounding of a drunk from town, not the light tapping of some lost traveler. It was slow, deliberate, like whoever stood out there had learned not to beg. Eli's breath clouded in the cold as he stood. The wind hissed around the eaves. For a moment, he thought he imagined it. Then the knock came a third time, the wood trembling under the weight. He took the lantern, lifted the bar, and pulled the door open a cautious hand's width. The light spilled out into the storm and caught on a figure that looked too big for the doorway. She stood barefoot in the snow, towering over him by a head, shoulders broad as a man's saddle, black hair stiff with frost and half-frozen braids. Her coat was torn, the edges stiff with old blood, and one sleeve hung loose over an arm crisscrossed with pale scars. Her eyes were the strangest part. Not wild, not begging, just tired, deep, dark, and tired. Evening. Her voice was low, almost hoarse from cold. I'll take a corner of your floor. I can pay in work. Or I keep walking and your conscience stays clean. The snow hissed against her skin. She didn't shiver. Eli swallowed, suddenly aware of how small he was compared to her, how narrow the doorway felt with her filling it. Out here, people told stories. About a giant Apache woman in the hills. About trouble that followed her like a shadow. He'd listened to those stories in town, eyes down, hands around his coffee cup. He'd never expected the trouble to look half dead on his doorstep. If you keep walking, he said quietly, you won't see sunrise. The lantern flickered between them. Her gaze didn't move. Then to side, she answered, I'm running out of nights. There are moments in life that feel small while they are happening, but look enormous when you glance back at them years later. One choice, one word, one open door. Eli lifted the lantern higher and stepped aside. Come in. She ducked under the frame and stepped onto the rough plank floor, snow melting under her feet. The cabin swallowed her up, the fire's glow washing over the sharp planes of her face, the welted skin on her knuckles, the long line of an old rope burn around one wrist. He dropped the bar back over the door and shut out the storm. Inside, the silence was different now. 2 sets of breathing. 2 shadows on the wall. Sit by the fire, Eli said, setting the lantern on the table. You're near frozen. She moved cautiously toward the hearth, not turning her back on him until she had to. Then she sank down beside the stove, one knee up, arms resting on it, eyes closed as the heat hit her skin. That name of yours, he asked. If you're aiming to stay through the night, I'd like to know who I'm boiling beans for. She opened her eyes again, slow, as if deciding whether he deserved an answer. Tala, she said. Tala Skyhorse. The flames danced across her face, picking out the tiny lines of fatigue at the corners of her eyes. Eli couldn't help staring, not because she was tall or scarred or Apache, but because there was a kind of stubborn dignity in the way she held herself, even half-frozen on a stranger's floor. He ladled stew from the pot and slid a bowl toward her. She sniffed it once, cautious, then began to eat in quiet, controlled bites. Steam coiled around her face. Outside, the storm pounded the walls as if it was angry at being cheated of one more life. Not afraid I'll hurt you, she asked finally, without looking up. Should I be? He replied. That's what your people say. Her mouth curled bitterly. Big savage woman in the hills. Strong enough to break a man's neck. What I see, Eli said, is someone who walked too far, too long, and ran out of road. Her spoon paused halfway to her mouth. You don't know a thing about me, rancher. True. He sat back on his chair, fingers wrapped around his coffee mug. but I know what it's like to walk home and not hear anybody's voice but your own. The air between them shifted, just a fraction. Less like stranger and stranger, more like two people standing on opposite banks of the same river. The fire popped. Tyler's shoulders eased a little. "If I'm here at sunup," she said quietly, "I pull my weight. I don't sleep under a roof for nothing." "You'll be here," Eli replied, glancing toward the small window. Snow was already piling halfway up the glass. Storms closing the pass. Nobody goes anywhere come morning. Not me. Not you. She put the empty bowl down. "For months," she murmured, almost to herself, "I haven't stayed under one roof more than a few hours. Haven't sat this close to a man without expecting a price." Her eyes lifted and met his straight on. "I haven't been with anyone in months. Carter. No camp, no home, no man. And every time I got near one, he wanted something he didn't own." There it was. The line people would twist into something dirty if they wanted to. In her mouth, it sounded like something else entirely. Not an invitation. A warning. A test. Eli felt the heat rise in his face. He stared into the coffee instead of at her. "You can rest here," he said slowly. "Eat here. Work here. I won't ask you for anything you don't offer. Not ever." Her eyes stayed on him a long moment, searching for the crack, for the hidden bargain. In a film, the camera would hold on her face right there, the little twitch in her jaw, the tiny flutter at her throat when she swallowed. Finally, her shoulders dropped. "Then I'll sleep," she said, "just for tonight." She curled near the stove, too big for the blanket he threw over her. Eli banked the fire low, listening to the storm claw at the walls while Tyler's breathing settled into a deep, exhausted rhythm. He laid down on his narrow bed against the back wall and stared at the ceiling. Sometime past midnight, the cabin creaked under a new blast of wind. Snow squealed against the window. In the darkness, Eli heard her voice. "Carter." "Yeah." "If they come looking for me, you tell them you never saw me." The question rose in his throat and stayed there. "Who? Why? What did she do?" He swallowed it back. "Sleep," he said softly. "Tomorrow, we'll see what's what." He didn't know it yet, but that promise, small, vague, almost careless, was the first stake he drove into the ground of a life that was about to change. Because by morning, the world outside his door would be buried neck-deep in snow, and the woman on his floor would no longer feel like a stranger. She would feel like a decision, and every decision has a cost. Morning came slow, as if the valley itself was reluctant to wake after a night like that. The storm had quieted, leaving behind a world smoothed over with fresh snow, the kind that swallowed sound and made everything feel a little unreal. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled to life while Eli stirred a pot of oats, trying not to look too long at the woman warming her hands near the stove. Tyler Skyhorse looked different in daylight. Still huge, still scarred, still carrying a presence that filled the room. But there was something gentler in her expression now. Not softness, exactly. Just a lessening of tension, like a wild horse deciding not to bolt. "You sleep any?" Eli asked, keeping his voice steady. "A little," she said. "Didn't dream. That's rare." He nodded, handing her a tin cup of warm water with herbs. She sniffed it, judged it, and then drank as if the warmth anchored her. They ate in silence, but it wasn't the uncomfortable kind. There was a mutual awareness settling in, the sense that yesterday had stitched a thin thread between them. After breakfast, Eli stepped outside to check the drifts. Snow reached nearly to his waist, forcing him to wade a path to the woodpile. When he returned, shaking flakes from his coat, he found Tyler standing at the window, watching the pale sky as if it carried answers. "You expecting someone?" he asked lightly. "No," she murmured, "but I've learned trouble doesn't always announce itself. Maybe today's different. Storms rarely change a person's luck." He leaned beside her, careful not to crowd her. "You're safe here. Said it last night. Meant it." Her eyes narrowed, not accusing, but searching. Men say many things. Safety is usually a bargain. Not this time. A flicker of something crossed her face. Not trust yet, but a tiny tilt toward it. She stepped away from the window and began quietly repairing the torn seam of her coat. Eli chopped more wood, trying not to stare at the strength in her hands or the way her breath fogged the cold morning air. Time passed slow and steady, the kind that settles deep in the bones. By midday, the light had changed. The storm clouds thinned into a pale silver sky, and the weight of the previous night began to lift, right up until Tala spoke again. "Carter," she said, voice low, "you deserve to know what stands behind me. You already told me enough to trust you." "No, not yet." She sat at the table, shoulders squared, eyes dark but clear. "There were men," she began. "They came through my people's land a season ago, called themselves surveyors, claimed they needed workers. But they weren't looking for volunteers. They were looking for bodies, hands, strength." "Slavers," Eli muttered, "not in name, but in practice." Her fingers curled. "They wanted me most of all. Thought I'd be useful. Thought my size made me easy to claim." She shook her head. "I proved them wrong. But escaping men like that leaves a mark. They don't forget the one who got away." Eli felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear of her past, but anger at the world that carved those scars across her skin. "You did what you had to," he said softly, "and I've been running ever since. Every campfire, every trail, every night." Her voice wavered. "Until the storm forced me here." Eli exhaled. "Steady. Then you're not running today." Tyler's gaze lifted, almost vulnerable. "You shouldn't tie yourself to this. I bring danger." "Everyone brings something," he said. "Some bring loneliness. Some bring trouble. Some bring hope. I'll decide what you bring, not the stories you tell." She stared at him long enough that he wondered if he'd said too much. Then her breath eased, and a small line of tension released in her shoulders. It was the closest thing to trust she'd shown. But the peace didn't last. A sound drifted across the valley, distant, muffled, unmistakable. Hoofbeats. Tyler froze. The cup in her hand trembled. "Carter." He stepped to the window. A lone rider moved along the ridge, dark against the snow. "Same man from yesterday?" Eli asked. "No, someone else. Worse, maybe." Her breathing quickened. "I can't be seen. If he spots me, he'll return with more." Eli nodded. "Store 'em. Go." "I hate hiding." "I know, but it's not fear, it's strategy. You pick when you face a man, not him." She hesitated, not because she disagreed, but because she wasn't used to someone giving her a choice that wasn't shaped like an order. Finally she went. The door clicked shut behind her. The knock came moments later, firm, slow, deliberate. Eli opened it with the same calm he didn't quite feel. The rider sat tall, eyes sharp. "Morning. Tracks lead this way. I'm looking for an Apache woman. Large. Strong. Some say dangerous." Eli didn't blink. "Haven't seen anyone except the storm." The man studied him, measuring. The wind rattled the doorframe. Eli kept his voice even, his posture easy. "You let me know if she passes through," the rider asked. "If she does," Eli said, "you'll be the first I don't tell." The rider frowned at the odd answer, but the storm-covered landscape called him back to the trail. He turned and rode off slowly, scanning every drift for a hint of footprints. When Eli closed the door, the bar dropped into place with a heavy thud. Tyler stepped out to the storeroom, breath shaky, eyes bright with something between fear and disbelief. "You lied for me," she said quietly. "I told a truth that kept you alive." She stood there staring at him, the enormity of the moment settling into her bones. "You don't understand what you just risked," she whispered. "You can explain it when you're ready," Eli answered. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she sank onto the edge of the bed, hands open at her sides, as if they didn't know where to rest. "I've never had someone stand between me and danger," she murmured. "Only behind me, or against me." "Get used to it," Eli said. Her eyes lifted, slow, uncertain, hopeful. "You don't even know if I'll stay," she said. "You're here now. That's enough." Outside, the pale afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the snow. Inside, a different kind of warmth settled in, the kind that didn't need fire to exist. For the first time in months, Tyler Skyhorse didn't feel like she was running, and Eli Carter didn't feel like he was alone. Whatever tomorrow brought, whatever shadows trailed behind her, today belonged to neither fear nor regret. Today belonged to the fragile, dangerous beginning of something real. The days after the ride had passed brought a quiet neither of them trusted at first. Snow softened the valley into gentle curves. The sky turned a clearer blue, and the cabin settled into a slow rhythm of shared work and unspoken understanding. Eli repaired the fence line closest to the barn. Tyler shoveled paths through the drifts as if the weight of the world lived in her shoulders, and she meant to lift it one shovelful at a time. They didn't talk much while they worked. They didn't have to. Trust, Eli realized, wasn't built from long conversations. It was built from the steady presence of someone who didn't disappear when the wind changed. One morning, he found Tyler perched on the back steps, watching steam rise from thawing patches of earth. The early sun lit her from behind, turning her silhouette golden. "You look like you're waiting for something," Eli said. "I am," she replied softly, "waiting to believe this isn't temporary." He sat beside her, elbows on his knees. "You think I'd let you freeze on my porch one night, feed you stew, hide you from men hunting you, then tell you to pack your things. You'd be surprised what people do when danger reaches their own doorstep." Eli shook his head. "You're not danger, Tyler. You're just carrying it." She looked down at her hands, larger and stronger than his by far. Men look at me and see either a threat or a tool. Hard to know what to do with someone who looks at me and sees neither. "You're someone worth knowing," Eli said simply. Her breath hitched, subtle but real. "No one ever said that to me." Inside, the fire crackled. Outside, the snow gleamed like silver. And in that moment, a quiet shift happened. Small, but deep enough to reach the foundation of both their lives. They spent the next hours in easy tasks. Tyler stacked with a precision Eli admired. Eli fixed a warped shutter while Tyler handed him tools without needing to be asked. It was a rhythm that didn't need instruction. Around mid-afternoon, as Eli was sweeping snow from the porch, Tyler stepped out of the cabin holding something he hadn't expected. A small, braided leather strap. "Made it from scraps you had," she said. "Something to hold your coat close. You keep losing buttons." Eli stared at it, surprised by the gentleness behind the gesture. "That's thoughtful." "It's practical," she said quickly, as though afraid to admit anything more. "You're always out there in the wind." He took it from her, fingers brushing haze for a moment too long to be accidental. Her breath caught, and she looked away as if that tiny contact had shaken more inside her than she meant to show. "You can stay here as long as you need," Eli said quietly. She held still, every muscle in her shoulders tightening. "Need is easy," she murmured. "Want is harder." "What do you want?" The question hung between them like a slow-moving tide. Tyler swallowed. "I want a day where I'm not hunted. A day where my strength isn't a reason someone tries to own me. A day where I wake up and don't ask myself how far away the nearest threat is." "That day can start here," Eli said. Her eyes met his, dark, searching, almost hopeful. Then the sound of hoofbeats shattered the peace. Not distant this time. Not wandering. Purposeful. Eli and Tyler froze at the same moment. They both knew this wasn't a neighbor checking the snow depth. Tyler stepped back, breath uneven, but she didn't run for the storeroom. Not this time. "I'm tired of hiding," she said. "And I'm tired of you thinking you're alone," Eli replied. The hoofbeats drew nearer. A shadow passed the window. Then a knock, sharp, controlled, too polite to be friendly. Eli opened the door halfway. A young woman stood there, wrapped in a thick coat, cheeks pink from cold. She wasn't armed, wasn't hostile, and didn't scan the cabin like a predator. She simply nodded once, tired and respectful. "Sir," she said, "I'm looking for someone. A woman. Tall. Apache. She left the mountains months ago. She's my sister." Eli blinked, surprised. Before he could answer, Tyler stepped into view. Her breath left her in a rush. "Mina." The woman's eyes filled instantly. "Tyler, we thought you were dead." Mina moved first, fast steps across the porch, arms thrown around her sister despite being half her size. Tyler stood stiff for a moment, as if unsure how to return the gesture, then slowly wrapped her arms around the smaller woman. It was the first time Eli had seen her hold anything gently. When they stepped inside, Mina sank into a chair, tears smudging dirt across her cheeks. "Tala, I searched every camp, every trail. Those men who took you, I thought they didn't break me," Tala said softly. Mina nodded, wiping her face. "They came back looking for you. More than once. They've been hunting your trail ever since." Tala swallowed. "I know." "Then you know you can't stay in one place long," Mina said. "Not if they're still roaming the territory." Tala looked at Eli. It wasn't a glance of permission. It was something else. Something that asked, quietly, what choice he would make. Eli rested a hand on the table. "She has a place here, for as long as she wants it." Mina studied him with an expression somewhere between gratitude and worry. "If you keep her here, you'll be risking your land, your safety." "Worth it," Eli said. Tyler's breath trembled. Mina looked between them and finally understood something her sister wasn't ready to say aloud. "You care for this man," Mina whispered. Tyler didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. Mina touched her sister's arm. "Then stay. But stay smart. Stay together. And don't let the past decide your next step." The sisters embraced once more. Then Mina rose, wiped her eyes, and stepped toward the door. "I'll send word if I hear anything," she said. "And Tyler, you deserve peace. Let yourself have it." When she rode away, the cabin felt different, less haunted, more possible. Tyler stood near the window long after Mina disappeared into the white horizon. "She shouldn't worry for me anymore," Tyler murmured. "I don't want to be a shadow trailing behind her life." Eli stepped beside her. "Then stay here." She looked at him, long and steady. "You mean that?" she whispered. "Every word of it." "I do." Tyler took a slow breath, the kind that marks a turning point, the kind that belongs to someone choosing a future instead of running from a past. "Then I'm done running," she said. Not loud, not dramatic, just true. Eli reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. Her fingers closed around his, strong, warm, unafraid. Outside, the last of the storm snow melted under the pale sun. Inside, two strangers who had met in desperation found something better than safety. A beginning, a place to stand, a reason to stay, and a future they didn't need to hide from. Tyler Skyhorse, who had spent years moving from one borrowed patch of land to the next, finally felt grounded. Eli Carter, who had grown used to silence, finally heard a second heartbeat inside his home. And the valley, quiet and white and waiting, watched as the first seeds of a new life took root beneath its winter sky.